True power doesn't manifest when you speak, but when you stay silent. And not just any silence, but that calculated silence that destroys without leaving traces, that collapses without raising its voice, that annihilates without anyone being able to point at you. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago, yet you still believe battles are won by shouting. Let me tell you something. Those who shout have already lost. Those who explain, who justify themselves, who need words to defend themselves, are already defeated. Silence is the weapon of those who truly know how to play. And if you still haven't understood that, it's because you're still a pawn on someone else's board. Think about the last time someone completely ignored you. They didn't attack you, they didn't insult you, they simply acted as if you didn't exist. Did it hurt more than any word? Of course it did. Because the human brain is programmed to seek recognition, to validate itself in the gaze of the other. And when that gaze disappears, when you become transparent, something inside you begins to crumble. That's the first lesson. Absence hurts more than hostile presence. An enemy who attacks you is giving you relevance. An enemy who ignores you is erasing you. And erasing you is far more effective than destroying you. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not just about ignoring, it's about doing it strategically. Machiavelli wasn't a philosopher of love. He was a cold analyst of power dynamics, and he understood something fundamental. Human beings are predictable. We all need to feel important. We all seek validation. And when someone denies it to us, we enter a state of anxiety that makes us vulnerable. That's the opening. When you ignore someone, you don't just make them invisible, you force them to look for you, to try to regain your attention, to move in your direction. And every movement they make toward you is another step into their own trap. You watch them trying to get your attention, justifying themselves, acting in increasingly desperate ways. You didn't have to say anything. You just had to withdraw your presence. Silence is not passive. It's a declaration of war without bullets. It's telling the other person you are not worth my energy. And that, believe me, destroys far more than any insult. Because an insult puts you on the same level. Silence places you above. An insult generates a response. Silence generates a void. And the void is unbearable. Now, destroying without words doesn't mean staying still. It means moving in ways the other person can't track. It means acting in the shadows while they stand in the light, convinced they are in control. Here's where Machiavelli becomes brutal. It's not about being good. It's about seeming good while doing what's necessary. Morality is a luxury for those who aren't playing seriously. Those who truly understand the game know that appearances matter more than intentions. You can destroy someone without saying a word, simply by letting their own actions speak for them. You don't need to defame them. You just need to create the right context for their mistakes to become visible. Think about this. How many times have you watched someone self-destruct because you gave them just enough rope to hang themselves? You didn't do anything. You just waited. That's the difference between the impulsive and the strategic. The impulsive attack, the strategists observe. And while they observe, they take note of every weakness, every pattern, every blind spot. When the moment arrives, they don't need to attack. They just need to move one piece. And that piece triggers a chain reaction the other never saw coming. Human beings are experts at projecting. When someone attacks you, it's rarely about you. It's about what you represent, what you remind them of in themselves. And here's the master play. Let them project. Don't correct them. Don't confront them. Just observe. Every projection is information. Every attack reveals an insecurity. And that insecurity is your point of entry. But be careful. It's not about exploiting it directly. That would be obvious. It's about letting it grow, allowing them to devour themselves. Machiavelli understood that a person's worst enemy is their own mind, And if you can plant a seed of doubt, that seed will germinate without you having to water it. They will take care of that themselves. How do you plant that seed? With subtlety. A look, a gesture, an action that cannot be fully explained. You don't give them clarity, you give them ambiguity. And ambiguity is the fertile ground of paranoia. When someone doesn't understand your moves, they begin filling in the gaps with their own fears. And those fears, that narrative they build in their head, ends up being more destructive than anything you could have told them. Now, here's something you don't want to hear. To destroy without words, you must be willing to be misunderstood. You must accept that some will see you as the villain even if you haven't lifted a finger. Because silence is uncomfortable, and people need villains. If you don't give explanations, if you don't justify yourself, they will create their own version of you. And that version, in most cases, will be distorted. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that while they are busy creating stories about you, you continue moving pieces. Seneca phrased it differently, but the idea is the same. He who cares about others' opinions is their slave. You cannot be a slave if you want to destroy. You must be free. Free from the need to be understood. Free from the need to be loved. Because love is an anchor, and anchors drag you down. Those who truly dominate the game don't seek to be loved. They seek to be respected. And respect isn't earned with sweet words. It's earned with decisive actions and strategic silences. Think of someone who betrayed you. What hurts more? Being betrayed with shouting in your face, or them doing it silently, without you knowing until it was too late? Silence multiplies the damage because it doesn't give you the chance to defend yourself. It doesn't give you the closure you need. It leaves you in limbo, wondering what happened, when it started, why you didn't see it coming. That's the beauty of silence. It gives no answers. And without answers, the mind enters an endless loop of speculation. Every theory they construct is another turn of the screw in their own destruction. Machiavelli knew this. He knew that power isn't in what you do, but in what others believe you can do. If you stay in the shadows, if you don't reveal your cards, they'll assume you have more than you really do. And that assumption paralyzes them, because fear of the unknown is greater than fear of the known. A visible enemy is manageable. An invisible enemy is terrifying. But let's go deeper. Destroying without words also means controlling the narrative without appearing to control it. It means letting others speak for you, letting others do the dirty work while you stay clean. This is where manipulation reaches its most refined form. You don't need to say anything if you can get others to say what you need said. How? By planting information, leaving clues, creating situations where the logical conclusion benefits your position. You don't tell them what to think. You guide them toward that conclusion. And when they reach it themselves, they defend it more fiercely than if you had imposed it on them. That's the difference between convincing and manipulating. Convincing is direct confrontation. Manipulating is social engineering. And social engineering leaves no traces. No one can point a finger at you because, technically, you didn't do anything. You just created the scenario. They acted. That's how the theater of power works. The one who directs the play doesn't need to step onto the stage. Epictetus was right about something, though he applied it differently. It is not things that disturb us, but the opinions we have about them. Use that to your advantage. You don't need to change reality. You just need to change how others perceive it. And perception can be manipulated without words, with gestures, with absences, with strategic presences. Imagine this. You appear at key moments. You disappear when you're not needed. That inconsistency generates intrigue, and intrigue generates attention. You're not begging to be seen, you're making them seek you. And when they seek you, you already have control. Because the one who seeks is in a position of weakness. The one who is sought is in a position of strength. Machiavelli applied it to politics, but it works anywhere. Relationships, business, any human interaction. The one who controls their visibility controls the dynamic. Now here's the harsh truth. To destroy without words, you must be patient. Patience is not waiting, it's calculating. It's knowing when to move and when to stay still. The impatient reveal their intentions too soon, the patient let time do the work. And time is the deadliest ally. Because with time, cracks widen, doubts grow, alliances weaken. You don't need to force anything. You just need to wait for the moment everything collapses under its own weight. And when it collapses, you're not even close. You're far away, observing, without a single word connecting you to the disaster. That's the perfect play. Chaos happens, but your name never appears. And if someone tries to point at you, there's no evidence, only speculation. And speculation doesn't destroy those who know how to play, it destroys those who speculate. Stoic philosophers spoke of control, of self-mastery. But control isn't only internal, it's external. Controlling your emotions is the first step. Controlling the emotions of others is the next. And to control others' emotions, you must understand their patterns. What makes them react? What makes them doubt? What makes them collapse? Once you know that, the rest is execution. And the most effective execution is the one that doesn't look like execution. It's a casual comment, a look at just the right moment, an absence when they need you most. Small actions that produce massive consequences. Because the human brain is not designed to process subtlety consciously. Great manipulations operate below the radar of awareness, in the realm of the subconscious. And there, in that realm, is where real battles are fought. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved, but he forgot to mention something. The best thing is to be ambiguous. For them not to know whether to fear or love you, not to know what to expect from you. That ambiguity keeps them in a constant state of alert, and prolonged alertness wears people down. It's like a psychological war where the enemy never knows when you'll strike because you never strike head-on. You strike from angles they don't expect, at moments they don't anticipate, with methods they don't recognize. And when they finally realize what happened, it's too late. They're already defeated. And the worst part for them is that they cannot point at you, because you never said anything. All the evidence points back to them, to their own decisions, their own mistakes. You were just there, in silence, watching them sink by themselves. Here comes the final paradox. Silence makes you more dangerous because it forces others to fill the void. And what they fill that void with is rarely the truth. It's their worst version of the truth. Their fears, their insecurities, their projections. They project all of that onto you, and in doing so, they destroy themselves. You did nothing. They did it all. And that is the cleanest way to win. Without blood on your hands, without words that can be used against you, without evidence connecting you to their downfall. Kierkegaard spoke about the vertigo of freedom, but there is another vertigo. The vertigo of silence. When you choose silence in a world that expects you to speak, when you choose not to justify yourself in a world that demands explanations, that silence becomes your armor. And that armor is impenetrable because there is nothing to attack. There are no words to twist, no speeches to dismantle. There is only emptiness. And emptiness, when used correctly, is the ultimate weapon. Think about this. How many times have you self-destructed because you couldn't stay silent? How many times have you said something you shouldn't because silence felt unbearable? That's your weakness. And if it's your weakness, it's the weakness of others. Most people cannot stand silence. They need to fill it. They need to speak, to explain themselves, to justify themselves. And every word they say is another rope they tie around themselves. You don't need to tie them. They do it on their own. Your job is simply not to cut the rope, to let them keep tying it until they can't move. When you reach that point, when you see someone has completely destroyed themselves without you having said a single word, you will understand the true meaning of power. It isn't the ability to destroy, it's the ability to make others destroy themselves while you watch. That is the lesson Machiavelli never wrote explicitly, but which is implicit in every page of The Prince. The true prince doesn't fight battles. He orchestrates them. He doesn't destroy enemies. He creates the conditions for them to destroy themselves. So, are you willing to truly play? Can you renounce the need to be understood, the need to have the last word? Because if you can't, you'll remain an amateur player in a game of professionals. Amateurs talk. Professionals act in silence. Amateurs need validation. Professionals operate without witnesses. Amateurs want you to know they won. Professionals simply win and disappear. That's the difference. And that difference is what separates those who leave a mark from those who get stepped on. Machiavelli gave you the tools 500 years ago, but tools are useless if you don't know how to wield them. And wielding them means, above all, learning to shut your mouth. Learning that silence is not weakness, it's strategy. That absence is not cowardice, it's calculation. That saying nothing can say everything if you know when and how to apply it. So here's your decision. Keep playing by the rules you were taught, the rules of fair play, of brutal honesty, of transparency. Or accept that those rules are for losers. Winners play by different rules. Rules that aren't written, rules learned by observing, by staying quiet, by moving in the shadows. You don't need to be evil, you need to be intelligent. And intelligence, in its purest form, is knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. Most people never learn that lesson. That's why most people never truly win. They settle for small victories, for battles that don't matter, while those who truly understand the game are winning wars without anyone noticing. Because real wars aren't fought with swords, they're fought with silence. And silence, when mastered, is the deadliest weapon that exists. It makes no sound, leaves no evidence, cannot be traced. It simply destroys. Slowly, silently, relentlessly. And when the dust settles, when everything is over, you're still there, intact, without a single word connecting you to the destruction. That is the art Machiavelli mastered. That is the art you can master if you're willing to learn. The question is, are you? The real war is not fought with weapons. It's fought with the calculated absence of them. Machiavelli understood something most people ignore. Absolute power doesn't need to be demonstrated. When you have to prove you have power, you've already lost it. True power is invisible until it manifests. And when it manifests, it's too late for whoever stands against it. Think about natural predators. The lion doesn't roar before attacking. The shark doesn't announce its presence. They advance in silence, calculate, wait for the exact moment. And when that moment comes, the prey doesn't even have time to prepare. That's the nature of real power. It operates in the shadows until the light no longer matters. But humans are different, right? We believe we've transcended instincts. We believe we're above nature. A lie. We are just as predictable. Only our weapons are psychological. And psychological weapons, when used correctly, are far more devastating than any physical violence. Because physical violence leaves visible marks, scars that can heal. Psychological violence leaves invisible wounds that never fully close. And silence is the most refined form of psychological violence that exists. Now, this isn't for everyone. Most people don't have the stomach to play this game, because it requires something very few possess: the ability to observe another's suffering without intervening. I'm not talking about gratuitous cruelty, I'm talking about strategic detachment. The difference is crucial. Cruelty seeks pain for its own sake. Strategic detachment understands that another's pain is sometimes necessary for your survival. And this is where conventional morality collapses. You were taught to be good, to help, to extend a hand. But no one told you there are people whose only purpose is to destroy you, and that extending your hand is simply giving them the tool to cut it off. Machiavelli had no time for moral fantasies. He understood that the world is a chessboard, and in chess, pieces get sacrificed, not for pleasure, but for necessity. The sentimental player loses. The cold player wins. That's the reality no one wants to accept. There is a concept in psychology called learned helplessness. It's when an organism, after repeated failed attempts to escape an adverse situation, simply gives up, stops fighting, accepts the suffering as inevitable. And here's the interesting part. You can induce that helplessness without saying a word. You just need to create a pattern in which every action the other person takes results in failure. You don't need to tell them they'll fail. You just need to make sure they do. Once, twice, 3 times. Eventually, they stop trying. They convince themselves they are incapable, that the problem is intrinsic, not external. And once they reach that point, you no longer need to do anything. They keep themselves down. This isn't theory, it's proven science. Seligman's experiments with dogs demonstrated that learned helplessness is real, measurable, replicable. And if it works with animals, it works with humans. Because as much as we like to believe otherwise, we're still animals. Sophisticated animals, but animals nonetheless. So how do you apply this without words? Simple. You create invisible obstacles. Every time the person tries to advance, something goes wrong. Not in an obvious way, not in a way that can be traced back to you, but subtly. An email that never arrives, a meeting canceled at the last moment, information that leaks, alliances that dissolve. Little things that individually seem like bad luck, but that collectively create a pattern of failure. And the human brain is designed to find patterns. When they find that pattern of failure, they start believing it's them, that they are the problem. And that's when you have them. Because once they internalize failure, they become their own saboteurs. You no longer need to do anything. They destroy themselves. This is what Machiavelli would call virtù in its darkest form. The ability to manipulate circumstances without anyone ever seeing your hand. But let's go further. Destroying someone without words also means understanding their deep psychology, their traumas, their insecurities, their breaking points. And you don't need them to tell you. You just need to observe. People reveal everything if you pay attention. How they react when they feel threatened, what they do under pressure, whom they turn to when they need support. All that information is pure gold, because once you know where it hurts, you know where to press. And the pressure doesn't need to be strong, it just needs to be constant. It's like water eroding rock. It's not strength, it's persistence. One drop does nothing. 1,000,000 drops create canyons. Apply that same logic to psychological destruction. You don't need a devastating blow. You need constant pressure on the right point. And that pressure can be as simple as a look, a presence, an absence. Little signals that tell the other person, you are not safe here. And when someone doesn't feel safe, they begin to collapse. Because safety is a fundamental human need, Without it, everything else falls apart. Freud spoke of the unconscious, those impulses and fears that operate beneath the surface. And here's the trick. You can manipulate the unconscious without the person realizing it. In fact, it's more effective if they don't. Because when manipulation is conscious, they can defend themselves. But when it operates at the unconscious level, there is no possible defense. It's like fighting an enemy you can't see. How do you create that unconscious manipulation? With symbols, with associations, with repetitions. For example, every time someone is about to succeed, you appear. You do nothing. You simply stand there. After several repetitions, their brain begins associating your presence with imminent failure. It isn't rational, it's Pavlovian. And the brilliant part is that they don't understand why. They just know that when you're around, things go wrong. Eventually, your very presence becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They get nervous, make mistakes, fail. You did nothing but exist in the right place at the right time. Jung spoke of shadows, those parts of ourselves we reject, bury, pretend don't exist. But shadows don't disappear, they hide. And when someone has a big shadow, they have a big vulnerability, because that shadow can be activated, brought into the light against their will. How? By creating situations where their shadow cannot remain hidden. If someone prides themselves on honesty but has a past full of lies, you create scenarios where honesty is put to the test. You don't accuse them, you say nothing. You just create the situation and observe. 9 times out of 10, the shadow emerges. And when it emerges, they destroy themselves trying to hide it again. It's like watching someone drown on dry land. They twist, contradict themselves, expose themselves. And all because you created the right context. The master of silence doesn't need to point out contradictions. He lets others see them. He lets truth speak for itself. Nietzsche said that whoever fights with monsters must be careful not to become one. But that's precisely the point. To destroy monsters, you must understand how they think, how they operate. And in that process, you inevitably absorb something from them. The question isn't whether you'll become a monster. The question is whether you can control the monster you become. Because here's the brutal truth. The world is no place for saints. Saints are martyrs, and martyrs are dead. If you want to survive, if you want to thrive, you must be willing to get your hands dirty, not physically, but morally. You must be willing to do things your idealized self would reject. And that requires a level of self-awareness most people don't possess. It requires looking in the mirror and acknowledging that you are capable of cruelty, manipulation, destruction. And once you acknowledge that, you can choose when and how to use it. That is the difference between chaos and control. Chaos is being a monster without knowing it. Control is being a monster consciously, selectively, strategically. Arthur Schopenhauer had a pessimistic view of humanity. He believed life is suffering, that will is a curse, that desire never ends. And he was right about something. Humans are constantly in a state of lack. They always want more, always need more. And that need is a weakness you can exploit. Because when someone needs something, you can control their access to it. It's not about giving them what they need. It's about making them believe only you can give it to them. And then, slowly, withdrawing it. Not all at once. That would be obvious. Slowly, drop by drop. Each time they must work a little harder to get the same thing. Each time they must sacrifice a little more. And eventually, they realize that what they're receiving is no longer worth what they're giving. But by then, they're so invested they can't withdraw. They've spent so much time, so much energy, so much of themselves, that walking away would mean admitting it was all a waste. So they stay. They remain in a game they've already lost, simply because they can't accept defeat. Economists call this sunk cost, but in psychological terms, it's far more devastating. It's the prison they built for themselves, and you only laid the first stone. Modern neuroscience has demonstrated something fascinating. The human brain cannot distinguish between real threat and perceived threat. The stress response is the same. Cortisol flows, the nervous system activates, the body enters survival mode. And here's the practical application. You can create perceived threats without any real threat existing. You just need to plant the seed of possibility. An ambiguous comment, a lingering look, a silence where there should be words. The other person's brain fills in the blanks, and it usually fills them with worst-case scenarios. It's the human negativity bias, an evolutionary mechanism that kept us alive when predators hunted us. But in modern social contexts, that bias becomes a vulnerability, because it means you can make someone feel threatened without threatening them. And when someone constantly feels threatened, their decision-making deteriorates. They make mistakes, act impulsively, reveal things they should hide. Chronic stress literally shrinks the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory and emotional regulation. So while you remain calm, operating from clarity, they operate from chaos. The battle is already decided before it begins. Robert Greene wrote The 48 Laws of Power, and although some of them are overly dramatic, there are fundamental truths there. One of them is, never outshine the master. But there is a darker version of that law. Always make others outshine your enemy. You don't need to be the one who destroys them. You need to create the conditions for others to do so. How? By manipulating perceptions. If you want someone to fall, you don't attack them directly. You make others see what you see. And you don't tell them, you show them. You create situations where that person's incompetence, arrogance, or weakness becomes impossible to ignore. And once others see it, they become your allies without knowing it. They begin to question, to doubt, to distance themselves. And when enough people distance themselves, isolation does the rest. Humans are social animals. Ostracism is a psychological death sentence. When someone finds themselves alone, without allies, without support, the game ends. Not because of your direct action, but because of the cascade of consequences you set into motion. That is masterful orchestration. The conductor never steps onto the stage, but without him, there's no symphony. Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War, and though it focuses on military conflict, the principles are universal. One of the most powerful is, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. But there's a deeper level. If you know the enemy better than they know themselves, you can predict every move. And when you can predict every move, you can prepare counter moves they'll never anticipate. Most people don't know themselves. They operate on autopilot, reacting to stimuli without understanding why they react that way. That makes them extraordinarily predictable. If you know someone has a fragile ego, you know they'll react aggressively to any challenge. If you know someone is insecure, you know they'll seek constant validation. These patterns are maps, and with the right map, you can navigate their psychology as if it were a maze you've walked 1,000 times. They feel lost. You know exactly where you are. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. That asymmetry of knowledge is absolute power. Silence also works as a mirror. When you don't respond, when you don't react, you force the other person to confront their own projections. They say something, expect a response, and none comes. What do? They start filling the void with their own insecurities. They wonder if they said something wrong, if they offended you, if they lost your favor. And each unanswered question sinks them deeper into uncertainty. Uncertainty is corrosive. It destroys confidence, erodes stability, creates anxiety, and all that without you saying a single word. You simply maintained silence, and silence did the work. This isn't gratuitous cruelty, it's pure strategy. Because in a world where everyone screams for attention, the one who can remain silent has the control. Attention is power, and you decide to whom you give it and from whom you withdraw it. That selectivity is what separates amateur manipulators from masters. Amateurs are predictable, masters are unpredictable. And unpredictability is terrifying. We've reached the final point, the concept that closes the circle. Machiavelli understood that the end justifies the means, but only if the end is worthy. Destroying for destruction's sake is cheap nihilism. Destroying with purpose, with strategy, with a clear objective, that is art. And art requires discipline. It requires knowing when to move and when to stay still, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to appear and when to disappear. Not everyone deserves to be destroyed, but some do. Those who block you, who sabotage you, who present a real threat to what you're building. For them, there is no mercy. Not because you're cruel, but because you're pragmatic. And pragmatism, when executed perfectly, is indistinguishable from mastery. So the question that remains is, do you have what it takes? Can you move in the shadows without losing your purpose? Can you destroy without words and keep your hands clean? Because if you can, the world is yours. If you can't, you'll remain just another player on someone else's board. The choice, as always, is yours. But choose quickly, because in the game of power, indecision is the first form of defeat.